A new playable version of Goldeneye just dropped on Nintendo Switch and on Xbox, and it's a good time to go on the record about Goldeneye. I've never really talked about the game, and we talk about new stuff and old stuff here. So regardless of this new re-release, there is a lot to talk about it specifically from a technical standpoint, some shortcomings. I'll talk about that more later in the video, but my main focus here was just a good excuse to talk about a cool game and very significant in gaming history, and one that I'm grateful that I was able to be in the throes of. I was in the thick of it when this thing released. It kind of came out of nowhere. It was a year or two after the GoldenEye movie released. It was the first Pierce Brosnan one. That was a big deal, but this game dropped. Nobody expected it to be good. You've probably heard a lot of people say this, and it's awesome. It's a lot of fun. This is a very personal video. I can only, provide my feelings, my context, but for me, the big thing with it was that I was young, but I had experienced Doom. I really liked Doom. I loved going over my uncle's house to play it on the computer. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. And then I never really got a taste of anything like that until GoldenEye dropped. And my dumb little ass was like, oh, this is like Doom. Is it actually like Doom? No, not really, but if you were a console player, this was a good first-person playable thing. Now, I was mostly a PlayStation kid at that time. I wanted a Nintendo 64, couldn't get my hands on both for obvious economic reasons, but my cousin had one, and we played this game endlessly. Gameplay-wise, is it perfect? No. I mean, was it perfect back then? I don't know. I remember even back in the day, it took a long time to get used to those controls. Those controls were rough. It was not a dual... a dual analog system. So it was tricky, but the developers came up with what they thought was a good interpretation of first-person gameplay. And it was good enough for people to really love it in the single player and the multiplayer. I mean, GoldenEye is such a big thing. People reference Oddjob and stuff like that. They're not referencing Oddjob from the classic films. They're just mentioning Oddjob from the game. For me, what makes it so satisfying is cool weapons. Lots of them, but also really in the single player for me is the feedback of the shooting. For it being a pretty old game, the sound effects and just the hit feedback is very satisfying. When you fill a dude with a couple of bullets, there is a pop, pop, pop. That is all auditory. It's all just sound, but it really helps you feel the impact and sell it in a way. The bullets pack a punch in this game. And from a game from 1997, they really nailed that. There are games today that I still play where sometimes the guns feel or sound weak. GoldenEye is not like that. From those hit impacts to the iconic sounds of every single weapon, from the silenced to the sniper rifles to the AK or the Soviet, even the Klob, which still sucks. There's something about that really worked with me. And then, of course, running around dumb little arenas as players trying to karate chop each other or hit each other with rocket launchers, that just worked. It was satisfying. And it was hook, line, and sinker, honestly, for Nintendo 64 with it having 4 controller ports. It was a no-brainer for most people. The other aspect for it for me was that I've talked about this before, I love James Bond. I just think it's really cool. It's something I've always just responded to a lot. The good, the bad, the crappy, the higher class ones. I just really like a lot of it. I have James Bond posters in my kitchen. Is that weird? So for me, the game just had that cool factor. It was cool to see these characters in this game where it kind of was wow, cool. Look how realistic they are. And now to this day, it is so funny. It makes me laugh just how busted all these characters look. And the fact that the game has the intro, which by the way, the most hype intro, flipping the Nintendo 64 on and then hearing the sound and the Rare logo and then bam, 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 the whole thing. James Bond, that just always gets me hyped. But the video game version, with the Rare logo and the sound, really worked. But then it goes to that character intro where you get to see everybody's faces and they're proud of that. And, good for them back in the day. But man, one of my favorite things in the game is from the second mission when you meet up with 006, Trevelyan, Alec, and he's for England, James, but his face is his face looks like it's a cardboard box that got punched in and they have a old ass JPEG of his face slapped on it, to the fact that they have Alan Cumming, his face is ruined on his character model as Boris. That stuff is really charming now, and you can't help but look and laugh and enjoy it. But I had so much fun going along with those characters and doing the whole thing where it's kind of like the movie, but not really. I mean, the vibe is there. A lot of the music and the feel is actually there, more than you'd expect. But a lot of the game, the missions have nothing to do with anything. You go and save a bunch of hostages on a military, missile launcher ship, and James Bond's wearing a tuxedo on the ship for no reason. What is that about? A lot of the missions are just you just go to Russia and shoot people. It's very like of the time. It's funny. Obviously, the movie dealt with Soviet themes, and like with it being the early 90s, like it was still relevant. So the game went all in on that. But like what I really liked about it was the kind of mysterious nature of it. It was for like a Bond thing. It was way more like eerie and mysterious, and like really had that spy feel, more than like a Bond property ever has. And I think part of that, of course, is the music. The music at this point has been talked to death. All I can add is that it is really, really damn good. From the like chill stuff, from the facility to like the opening, like all that music is really good. The pause music is like a meme now, but it's like, you know, what I think is really interesting, all I can really add is just somebody who loves James Bond movies and has seen them all, heard all the music. The fact that this game still managed to take creative spins with the Bond motif after James Bond being a thing for decades is really, really impressive. And the music helped really add to that air of mystery. It was great for the action, but it was like the levels where you're wandering around in the snow and hopefully taking out a couple of guys also dressed in snow gear. And it's like there's like this moody black, red sky above you. And it's just very, very atmospheric for such a simple game where it's just like arenas and textures. It's just cool, for lack of a better word. That's it. I know some people, even back then, would say that Goldeneye was overrated. I have no perspective of that because I was young. So, of course, I ate this shit up. For me, I would say it was probably like the best video game cheat system at that point. You know, like video game cheats were a thing well before that. But just some of the creativity they had here with like paintball mode and stuff, that's just so memorable. But not only that, it really amplified the fun factor of the game. We loved playing the paintball mode. It just made it like that much cooler. As kids, yeah, you love blood and guts and stuff like that. But paintball, you could cover your characters in paint. Why not? Let's do it. I'm also just thankful for this game for really kicking things forward with way more James Bond games. That was a time. What a time to be alive. They were like James Bond games a mile a minute. It was like Star Wars games and Bond games were just getting thrown at you constantly. And most of them were really damn good. And it was very cool. I think I want to do a video on more Bond games. From Nightfire, Everything or Nothing, to even like Bloodstone, there's so much. And Goldeneye, like at least for me, felt like the starting point of that. Now with this newly released version, it's really cool for casual people to hop in. Dude, like if you're a casual person and you don't nitpick things and you had Goldeneye nostalgia, which a lot of people do, it was like a game that people would play in college and stuff like that. Like it was like a retro game that'd be like, hey, look who brought out the Goldeneye, like let's go. Like it's a cultural thing. And I think for a lot of people to be able to just fire it up now on your Xbox through Game Pass or whatever, or on Nintendo Switch, people are going to be super excited for that. That's super awesome. For me, as an annoying, insufferable nerd who reads into everything more, and you're probably the same way, yeah, technically there are some shortcomings to it. I'm not the best to like kind of dive into those, so I'll link Modern Vintage Gamer's video. I think he did the best breakdown of it. Essentially, some of it was just the way it's emulated. Some of it's the way that like now it's on a higher definition screen. I like the widescreen support. I don't like all the tearing and the seams of objects and stuff. The sound to me doesn't sound as good as it could be, but otherwise, like I found it playable and still fun. But there's a couple of things with this. Like number one, I think they could have done more. I think that's the general consensus here, where I've said this with the Grand Theft Auto original trilogy release, and I'll say it with this. It's a big deal game that like you think it should have gotten so much more care, like the care it deserves and like the reverence to it. With this whole thing, with Goldeneye, it's such a rights nightmare, I'm sure, between Nintendo, the sticklers that they are, with also the James Bond property, and then Xbox now owning Rare. Like it's such a thing, and it's been up in the air for years. We've heard about this coming out, this re-release, different variants of it. There was a 2006, I believe, like full kind of faithful remake of the game with like newer textures and stuff that is out there online. It leaked. It's really, really cool. I want to give that the time of day at some point. I'm just lazy, but it looks like it could have been a really sick, fun new way to play it. So there was that. There was the fact that this finally came out, and it feels like they were just like, all right, we got it done. All the lawyers, okay, okay, just put it out, you know? And I don't want to do a disservice to the people that ported it over and put the work in, but I just wish they would have given more budget and more time to like give it a real good hurrah. Because like I said earlier, Goldeneye, this was like a cultural touchstone for gaming. So give it the reverence, the love that it really deserves. I would have loved to have seen, obviously, more graphical improvements, just more care taken to all that technical stuff, but also maybe even that 2006 kind of reskin, remaster type of thing. Do a Halo Master Chief Collection type of thing, or insert any other where you can switch between new and old graphics, special features, just kind of like little looks and insights into the game. And the big thing is parity, of course. A parity, not parody, in the sense that the Nintendo Switch version has online play, which I think is not the most massive thing, but for some friends, that's going to be very, very cool. For some people that grew up playing GoldenEye, and maybe now they live in different parts of the world, that is an excellent, excellent thing. And I would love to just feel the vibes of those people jumping back in and playing online with that. And then on the other hand, on the Xbox version, it has a better control scheme option. It allows you to play with 2 analog sticks and play it like a traditional shooter. And I'm not gonna lie, I think it plays pretty well. I thought the update was pretty good. I don't want to deal with the way it used to play at this point. I'm good experiencing it now with a little bit of modern updates. They did a good job with that. But I think more control options, consistent control options, and you know, if they could have somehow have gotten multiplayer for everybody, that would have been good. Also, the fact that this release is kind of like weirdly locked behind subscription services. It's not really like a thing. It's not really like a product. It's something that you access. You are able to play GoldenEye whenever you like. You know, there's something weird about it. I would have loved, and it could still happen, but with the way the licensing, probably not. I would buy the shit out of a limited run games physical edition of this new release, this like, you know, anniversary edition or whatever you would want to call it of GoldenEye, the new and improved, the everything packed in, you know? Like I'm just saying, like, for history reasons, like obviously you can go buy a 64 cart and emulation exists, right? It's a very accessible game. But in terms of like a re-release, the fact that like it is existing on newer things, accessible for more normie, more casual people, I would have loved for a physical version of this to exist. And like, I'm not like the biggest physical media guy, but like I understand the importance of it. This is one I really would have liked to have grabbed. And I just, you know, it just feels weird. I think that stuff should be acknowledged, not to be a bummer. But on the other hand, I think whether you play it this way or some other old way, you should experience GoldenEye. Like if you're a gaming historian or if you're a youngin', it's actually pretty fun. On the easiest modes, it's kind of like just like a high-speed run and gun zappy thing with more of a challenge. If you ramp up the difficulty, it can actually get pretty compelling, and you really have to understand the ins and outs of levels and also understand what the objectives are, because the game does not spell a lot of things out to you, which is, you know, it's a little more old school. It's a little more refreshing in this day and age, but it's just a special thing. Like the story behind it even happening, like the fact that we got this game and the fact that so many people embraced it is nice. As a Bond fan, as a video game fan, as a first-person fan, as a whatever fan, GoldenEye is cool, and I'm glad it's still around. I have talked for a long time. Wow. I've talked for a long time about GoldenEye, so I want to know what you guys think. Are you in the camp where, like, you say, nah, it's underrated? I think once I turned into a teenager, for a while, I pulled that line. I was like, nah, it's underrated. But now, as a seasoned adult, I'm like, nah, that was pretty tight. Let me know where you stand on this stuff. Obviously, maybe some of you guys are more Perfect Dark fans than GoldenEye. It's a whole other conversation to have. I have less nostalgia around that one, but again, here, GoldenEye. Who did you play as? Did you have any multiplayer memories with your friends? Were you just a single player person? What's your favorite level? Do you get what I was trying to talk about with like the air of mystery around the game and the really good feedback for the shooting and stuff? Let's talk anything GoldenEye down in the comments. I want to hear from you guys. And I appreciate you sitting through this whole video. Just a guy rambling about a thing he likes. Thank you. If you get it, clicking the like button does help me out. Thank you. Also, shout out to people who have my back as YouTube members or on Patreon. Also, thanks to any of you for showing up. But I'm Jake Baldino. I'll see you guys in the next one. Pizza's on me. Subscribe because video games.